What is an unexplainable memory from your childhood? I have this memory of sleeping in an office block in South London with my mum on an airbed. I recall looking out of the window and feeling sad. Years later I was driving and got a very strong impulse to stop outside this building, and I was 100% certain it was that one. Every time I went past it felt odd. My mum says it didn't happen. Everyone else concurs. My best conclusion at this stage is that I probably had a very vivid dream that became conflated with something else. Not particularly interesting, but something I've always wondered about. As a kid it was only my mum and I. Sometimes she'd leave me home alone while she was at work during school holidays and some weekends. I was about 7 and the first few times I was terrified. Completely convinced a serial killer would break in, so I'd take enough food from the kitchen then lock myself in my bedroom all day. Wouldn't drink too much water to avoid using the bathroom. When I watched television I set it to the lowest volume possible and sat right up close to listen, and I wouldn't turn on any lights when it got dark. Just squinted at my books near the window. That way burglars wouldn't know I was home. I played hiding games with myself sometimes, like can I fit into this hamper so that burglars won't find me if they break in. After a year of nothing happening my nerves settled, though I was still locking the bedroom door after me. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was in my bedroom when I heard a door slam in the living room during the daytime. I froze. There was rustling, and I could hear heavy footsteps back and forth. I remained totally still. Whenever it went quiet, I thought maybe it would be okay to get up, and then noises would start again. I heard things moved around, maybe shuffling. The movements were purposeful, in a hurry. I don't remember how long it was until they stopped long enough that I thought they left. I don't recall whether I heard the door slam shut again. Honestly, I think I just got sick of sitting complete still in one position. The sun was setting, and I crept out to look around. The place was maybe messier, but our shithole apartment was always in disarray, so I couldn't really tell. For some reason I thought I'd get in trouble if anything was missing, so I started tidying up. My mom came home later, and I didn't say a word. It was probably just my mom coming back for something, or a neighbor, or at most, an opportunistic thief who didn't find anything worth stealing. But I did always wonder what happened that day. When I was about 4 or 5, I was in the foyer by my front door when I saw my father come in the house, put down his briefcase, and then walk to my mother to give her a kiss on the cheek. Then the front door opened again. It was my father, again. I looked next to me where I had seen him put his briefcase. It was gone. I looked back at him, scared, and said, "You just did that." I have never hallucinated in the more than 25 years since this happened, and nothing like it has ever happened since. I welcome theories or explanations. Thanks. I could lucid dream when I was a kid. I would actually get really excited to go to bed because I could decide what to dream and then dream it. I had a reoccurring character in my lucid dreaming. He was a boy my age with blonde hair. We would always play in this backyard/playground type setting that has a big brick wall on the edge. One night I dreamt that we really wanted to find out what was on the other side of that wall. So we climbed a tree and the boy climbed onto the wall, looked back at me and waved, and went over it. I never lucid dreamed again after that. It actually caused me a lot of distress as a kid. I legit missed him terribly and tried so hard to lucid dream, but just couldn't do it anymore after that. Sometime before the age of 5, I remember being convinced that if I tried hard enough and believed in myself, I could fly. So I would practice flying, jumping down the stairs when nobody was watching. I never developed my ability to fly, but I vividly remember basically cannonballing down 14 steps and just gliding down in midair and landing at the bottom totally safe and uninjured. Many times over the years. When I was a little kid, I thought that the mountain ranges on the horizon on the way to Grandma and Grandpa's house were built by my Uncle Richard. I have no idea how this idea got into my head, but I remember that when I figured out that there was no way it was possible, I was pretty bummed out. When I was really young I was being babysat by a couple of teenage/college age girls that were friends with one of my older cousins. They took me to a party, laid me down in a random bedroom upstairs, and put on a random videotape that definitely wasn't Barney or anything else suited for children. My mom swears this never happened, but I remember it way too clearly for me to make it up. I remember being at a playground with my family and seeing lightning strike right in front of me. Didn't hear any thunder, no one else saw it, but I remember seeing it pretty vividly. Not sure if there's something that can go on in your brain that would cause something like that to happen, but I remember pleading with my mom to believe that I had just seen a lightning bolt strike right in front of me, and she just ignored me. The whole neighborhood thought I was kidnapped. I don't really know why and what the actual fuck is the thought process of how they think that happened, but apparently the people are frantically searching me. What I remembered is that my elder cousin and her husband took me to an internet cafe to let me watch them pick their wedding outfits. When we returned, everyone was shocked. My brother smiles because he knew I was in trouble. My mom was crying and my dad slapped the shit out of me. It was so surreal. My mother walked into my room, waking me up to tell me that most of the world's population was dead. I spent the rest of the day as normal, eating breakfast, going shopping with her, going to a playground, then eating dinner, albeit acting quite nervous throughout. The next day, she tried to make it clear that what started the previous morning wasn't true. I asked her if she remembered, but she told me she didn't. I'm certain it wasn't a dream, because I recalled the rest of what happened the previous day to her, only to be met by her confirmation that everything I remembered was correct, right down to how shaky I was, and how upset I seemed. All except for the part that humanity was on the brink of extinction. My sister and I apparently both had the same dream one night, a scary one. We were staying in this villa where we had to share a room and we both woke up suddenly. The window was open when it hadn't been before. I realized she was awake as well and told her I'd had a bad dream, and as I started to describe it, she started talking along with me, describing the same dream. In it, this black creature that looked like a bull, only it had shiny, scaly, plastic-looking skin, was standing in the open window with this weird mechanical device, and it somehow fired a projectile at the lamp in the room, which started rocking back and forth. Neither of us wanted to get up and close the window in case the thing was actually out there, so we called for our mum, and she closed it, reassured us in typical mum fashion, etc. For months we would talk about that incident, and we could never figure out how we both managed to have the same exact dream at the same time. I don't believe in the supernatural today, but I used to anyway. So there I was, a 7-year-old kid in rural Utah. I was staying the night at my grandparents' house on Main Street. I didn't want to sleep, so around midnight I went down into the basement. I took my Matchbox cars and played Night City with my glowing better blocks. I had this little metropolis going on when my uncle came down to play with me. Should I mention my great uncle died when I was 2? Well, he did. Anyway, my great uncle and I played Night City for a good hour. I remember it like it was yesterday. He drove the Lincoln because that was his favorite car. Anyway, it got late. He had to leave so he wouldn't miss his train. He left. I went to sleep. The next morning I asked when uncle was coming back to play again. My grandparents were slightly offended that I brought it up. They hadn't seen him since before I was born and wanted nothing to do with him. He was the black sheep of the family. I said him, and I played cars and showed them the car that he drove in our city. They were uncomfortable with this and chalked it up to my imagination. I never met my uncle again. He died when I was 2. Over the years since then, I have learned that he drove both a train for Union Pacific and a Lincoln VI. Like I said, I don't believe in ghosts, but I don't know how 7-year-old me knew things about an estranged relative who died when I was 2 and was never spoken of due to certain family issues. To this day I don't know what happened that night, but I remember playing Night City with some guy who said he was my uncle, like it was yesterday. He was super nice, and at the end of the game simply left out the back door. When I was a kid I had a classmate over who claimed he was a vampire. I didn't believe him. I told him, if his eyes glow in the dark, that would prove he was a vampire. We went into the bathroom, and I turned off the light. His eyes were glowing. It scared the crap out of me. I opened the door, ran outside, jumped on my bike, and got as far away from my house as I thought I could. When I eventually came back home, the classmate was gone, and my dad was pissed that I abandoned my friend. When I was 6, I had a girlfriend named Molly. I moved away the next year and never saw her again. For the next 40 years, one of my earliest and most vivid memories was me watching a 6-year-old redhead girl running away from me, up towards her house, yelling, "Mommy, mommy, Jonathan kissed me," and her mother's voice coming back, "Well, that must mean he really likes you." A few years ago, I'd had a little sangria and decided to see if Molly was on Facebook. I know. There she was. Right name, right age, right hometown, lovely red hair. I met her asking if she was the right red-headed girl. She wrote back that she was definitely the right Molly and was happy to hear from me, but she'd only started dyeing her hair red after college. Memory's a trip, man. I was like 3 to 5 years old when this happened. I woke one night while camping in a cabin, and I saw a cattail dangle from this lamp. It had sink down and then disappear back up into the lampshade. It also started calling for me, going like hoo-hoo. Unnerved the hell out of little me. I can't remember if I just never checked to see if there was anything there, or that I did check and there was nothing there. I chalk it up to just being so tired I was hallucinating. My family and I were driving out of Bellows, a campsite / beach for military families in Hawaii. I lazily gaze out the window and something catches my eye. About 30 feet away in a clearing before a metal gate leading into the forest was a massive bird. Like 8 feet tall, massive. It had a long neck, brown feathers, and very thick long legs. My jaw dropped, and I was still processing what I had seen when my dad said, "What the hell was that?" Turns out he had seen it too, and we both described it identically. No one else saw it, and by the time our brains had caught up with our eyes it was too late to turn around. I will always regret not turning around. When we returned later in the day there was nothing there. When we asked a guard about it, he laughed at us. I scoured the internet afterward, and it looked like nothing I could find. At least, nothing that isn't extinct. It looked amazingly similar to one of the larger species of moa. But those lived in New Zealand thousands of miles away and died out hundreds of years ago. This happened back in 2009, and to this day I wonder whether I saw a Lazarus species. I've a good one. So I would have been 2 or 3 years old. Me and my older brother and sister were playing in our front room. My brother is 2 years older than me, and my sister is 4 years older than me. I remember being able to see straight out the window, unobstructed, so there were no blinds or nets, etc. Suddenly a white transit van pulls up outside, and 3 men in balaclavas get out, and next thing I know they are in the house. I don't know if the door was broken down or already open or someone opened it. My memory of this is mostly images due to my age and I didn't see the door, if that makes sense. Anyway, they start beating up my mum and stepdad. My mum is held up against the wall in the kitchen with a knife. My stepdad is on the floor being beaten and kicked etc by the other 2 men. It's chaos. My big sister somehow had the sense to get us all out. She helped me and my brother climb out the front window and raced next door to get help. Next thing I know, the men run out past us. We are in the front garden and into the van and drive off. I remember all 3 of us screaming, assuming Mum was dead given we saw a knife to her. She wasn't though. She was beaten but not stabbed. Stepdad badly beaten but again conscious and okay. Police were never involved. That night we packed up everything we could, and in the night we left that house and moved an hour away. Spent time living with acquaintances and in women's refuges etc. Was a long time after before we had a new home. My mummy's unreliable at best with details of our childhood. I'm estranged. We don't talk at all. I remember asking her once what it was about, and she claimed it had to do with her hearing too much about a chalky white murder while she worked in a pub. I don't really believe that. I know my stepdad was in and out of prison, so it's more likely he got involved and screwed over the wrong people. But that whole thing is genuinely my earliest memory. Me and my friends used to visit a haunted mansion regularly when we were younger, hoping to see something weird. One day we did. It's a giant ass building, and it was always beyond me why someone would just abandon it and let it rot away. It was always apparent nobody lives in there, so we got scared shitless when lights went on in every single room. My friends to this day swear they saw a figure running through the buildings at an incredible pace, not trying to look out the window, but just running really fast. I didn't. Nonetheless, the moment they started running, I also went full on Usain Bolt mode. Since they still say it's what happened, I don't have any reason to doubt it. So either we saw something paranormal or just a hobo that really liked installing light bulbs in an abandoned mansion so that he can run from room to room just to scare people that are watching the building from the outside. Either way, the rest of my life I for sure won't even remotely go close that building anymore. I have an extremely vivid memory of my brother and I standing on top of our backyard tool shed some 13 or so years ago. We climbed up top and then proceeded to fly around in the air about 30 feet over the grass. Eventually we got scared that we wouldn't be able to land, so we came back down. And of course, we couldn't do it again. Here's the best part, my brother also has this exact same memory, down to all the details. We genuinely don't know what happened and still wonder it was real. I'm not sure how to account for it. I recently remembered that a girl used to sit on my lap when I took swimming classes around the age 12 years old. After remembering more details, some being sexual, I asked my mum and she answered I used to hang about with my friend's sister who would have been 17 at the time. No one knew what was going on, but my mum stopped me seeing her after she invited a 12-year-old me to her house for a birthday party. Somewhere down the line my mind realized it was not normal and suppressed the memory. So it almost feels like it isn't my own memory and some parts still creep me out a little. I was laying down in bed trying to fall asleep. All of a sudden it appeared that a ghost hand emerged from behind my bookshelf and grabbed the book on the end of the shelf. I was scared out of my mind at first, but then convinced myself it was just a dream, so I could fall asleep. The next day, when I woke up, the book on the end of the shelf was missing. I never could find it,